Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on disrupting the education space, the first in CRDF Global series on innovation ecosystems, and a part of WorldBoston series, International Exchange in a Time of Isolation. My name is Caitlin McAllister, and I'm a project lead at CRDF Global in our Technology and Innovation Division, where I implement IVLP and cybersecurity programs. Celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, CRDF Global is an independent nonprofit organization that was founded by an act of Congress in 1995, shortly after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. At the time, our original mandate was to engage scientists from countries of the former Soviet Union in collaborative research projects with American scientists in order to build critical relationships in this part of the world. Over the past 25 years, our mandate has expanded to include collaboration in global health, cybersecurity, counterproliferation, and professional exchanges. The thread that connects all of these engagements truly being our desire to strengthen individuals, build relationships, and improve the world that we live in. The International Visitor Leadership Program is one of the programs that allows us to achieve these goals. In its 80th anniversary, the IVLP is a premier professional exchange program by which approximately 5,000 participants from around the world are selected by U.S. embassies to travel to the U.S. and confer with their professional counterparts each year. Through these encounters, they gain a greater understanding of the cultural and political influences in U.S. society while exchanging best practices in their fields. Visitors represent government, politics, the media, education, NGOs, the arts, public health, and many other fields. In fact, over 500 current or former heads of state and other distinguished world leaders have at one time participated in the IVLP. The group of IVLP alumni that we'll hear from today are joining us 1 year after their visit to the US as members of the 2019 Science and Technology Entrepreneurship IVLP. During their time in the US, the visitors traveled to Washington, D.C., Boston, Massachusetts, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Kansas City, Missouri, Akron and Cleveland, Ohio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Dallas, Texas, and New Orleans, Louisiana. Today, we'll be hearing about some of the continuing collaboration between the alumni and their counterparts in the US, particularly those at Learn Launch in Boston, where their program was arranged by Sarah Sibley at WorldBoston. I'll turn it over to Sarah to introduce WorldBoston and our distinguished speakers.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Sibley, the Vice President for Citizen Diplomacy at WorldBoston, and we're delighted to partner with CRDF Global on this international exchange opportunity today. As you may know, WorldBoston is an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization based in Boston with the mission of fostering international engagement and global cooperation. That mission is particularly important during this truly global time of a pandemic. So even though we're at home, maybe especially while we're at home, we strongly believe that while programs may change, the mission persists. So today's event is part of our ongoing virtual series called International Exchange in a Time of Isolation, which is designed as part of our ongoing citizen diplomacy work and focuses on people-to-people contact and the human face of the international dynamics shaping our lives. We hope you'll check out our upcoming virtual programs and learn more about WorldBoston at worldboston.org. We need your participation, and if you can help, your financial support to keep this essential mission going. And in terms of housekeeping for our event today, we are using the webinar format of Zoom. Everyone but the speakers will be muted. If you want to see all of the speakers at once, click Gallery View in the upper right-hand corner. We are asking all questions to be put into the Q&A box, not the chat box, where I will be curating them for the 10 to 15 minute Q&A session after the 35 to 45 minute discussion. We are also using the raise hands function, which you can use if you would like to be called on to ask your question aloud of the panelists. If you have your Zoom hand raised, our moderator will call upon you at an appropriate time. My colleague Josh Bruno, Manager of Citizen Diplomacy Programs, will be running tech as our producer today. We may extend the discussion by 15 minutes past the hour to allow for more fruitful conversation. We understand if you must sign off at the hour mark, so please note that we are recording this event, and we will be sending the recording link in a YouTube link in an email follow-up. Feel free to visit WorldBoston's YouTube channel to see all the recordings of this series, as well as some of our other virtual events. Additionally, I do want to ask for your patience today with the multiple cross-continent connections. If a panelist connection does get slow, we will turn off their video until it is restored. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for this week's episode. My colleague will share the website links with full bios of our speakers in the chat box for you. All of our panelists and our guest moderator are connected to the program Caitlin mentioned, the IVLP, which WorldBoston implements in our community. WorldBoston typically hosts about 800 international leaders each year, designing and implementing a professional exchange for them. We had the pleasure of hosting our 4 international panelists today a year ago in Boston. It's hard to imagine now, but the visitors were able to take a Boston Harbor cruise, cheer on the Red Sox at Fenway, and enjoy home hospitality in the homes of 4 local dinner diplomats. The group's professional program with us included appointments with representatives of Babson College's Arthur M. Blank Center for Entrepreneurship, Northeastern University's Center for Research and Innovation, Harvard Innovation Lab, Mass Challenge, and the Capital Network, including with the entity that houses it, Learn Launch. Today, we get to continue that exchange of global perspectives on EdTech in the industry's current evolution. We are delighted that our local community partner, the Edtech Accelerator Learn Launch, is participating in continued collaboration with the now alumni of the IVLP. Benjamin Bungard is joining us today as the Director of Operations at Learn Launch Accelerator and as an advisory board member for the Capital Network. Joining us from Europe, we have alumnus Mr. Voldemars Bredikis, who is the board chair of Commercialization Reactor Fund, an international technology commercialization platform and accelerator fund based in Latvia. From Estonia, alumna Ms. Kadri Arek serves as the marketing and communications manager at Tartu Science Park Foundation, which nurtures startup companies in the region. From Bosnia and Herzegovina, alumnus Mr. Vedran Cimonovic is the executive director of Intera Technology Park, an NGO that supports young entrepreneurs through linkages between business and academia. We also have an alumna extending our continental perspective today and joining us from Kenya, Ms. Nekesa Ware, who is the managing director of iHub, Nairobi's first innovation and incubation center, which now supports over 25,000 businesses and entrepreneurs across Kenya. We are delighted that Ms. Cathy Mannick is joining us today as our guest moderator. She is the perfect fit as an EdTech angel investor and mentor, including at Learn Launch, but also as a board member of CRDF Global and an active member and citizen diplomat of WorldBoston. As our moderator and panelists discuss for the next 35 to 45 minutes, I want to remind those of you who have recently joined that there will be time for Q&A after the discussion. So please do send any questions you have in the Q&A box. If you miss anything, don't worry. We will be sending a recording on YouTube after the event concludes. In particular, we also ask that everyone please be patient with the transcontinental connections here on Zoom. Over to you now, Cathy.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much, Caitlin. I'm absolutely delighted to be moderating today's program. I am a huge fan of both CRDF Global and WorldBoston, and have been interested for a number of years in the education space, in particular the EdTech space, and I've done some work with Learn Launch. So very happy to have all of these coming together in today's program. What I'm going to do is engage in a question and answer with our panelists, and then, as Sarah said, we'll open it up for questions at the end. So with that, I'd like to get on with the discussion and my first question. So all of our panelists have participated in IVLP last year, and I'd like for you to tell us about the connections you made with each other and with people you met in the US during your IVLP year during your IVLP visit in 2019. How have you used these connections, and what have you learned from that experience so far? And specifically, I know there was a follow-up program this summer called Edtech Evolution. I'd like to hear for you to tell our listeners about that and what it is, who's involved, and any observations you might have. So would one of the panelists like to begin with your impressions about IVLP last year? Would like to start. Voldemars, I see you at the top of my screen, so why don't you begin?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Voldemars, and thank you for this opportunity to flash back to wonderful events and wonderful program we completed last year when travel was still safe and all things were better, I guess, or as usual. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience for myself, and I believe for most of us. And one of the biggest values is that it brought together a group of people with similar values and similar interests, more or less, and also internally in the group, and also people who we met in organizations we were visiting. Everyone was from the innovation ecosystem or from education ecosystem, and that was really inspiring and also empowering. And I mean, when we visited Boston, I think magic happened there. All the education institutions and people from the industry, that was really eye-opening and inspiring. And yes, and we after that we also came up with Edtech Evolution. Do you want me to tell now more about Edtech Evolution?
And then we'll hear from the others. But yes, just tell us briefly what Edtech Evolution is, because I think that's a very important outcome of your visit last year.
Yes, that's true. That's directly the outcome of the visit, because people from the group, as well as people whom we met in Boston, were like Benjamin, were involved in this program. And the idea of the program was basically to address the questions in education industry, in the education space, because it's widely acknowledged that education system more or less haven't changed for several hundreds of years, and we all know that there are gaps, and there might be gaps, but there is just not enough reason to change substantially something. And with this COVID-19 crisis, which is basically a bad thing, but some questions and some opportunities and some reason to ask those questions appeared. So we put together a brief and efficient program, a week-long acceleration program for EdTech startups, where we combined the resources we have as an innovation ecosystem, as a startup ecosystem, investors and industry, and ask questions what we as industry have learned, what we have learned as a society, and what EdTech innovators have to offer to address those new challenges. And that wouldn't be possible without my friends from this IVLP group who committed to help to work with startup teams. Also, our friend Benjamin from Learn Launch in Boston, who is representing Edtech Accelerator, and gave his professional input in organization of the program, as well as work with startups. So we had 11 teams from 10 countries participating in the program, and we had in total, I would say, about 50 people from about 20 countries mentoring and coaching the teams. So we evaluate that as a great success. Several teams have started pilots with universities, and we're still receiving thank you notes for raising those issues up.
That sounds like a great follow-up to IVLP. Well, let's hear from some of the other panelists. Nikesa, what about your experience with IVLP? Tell us something about the connections you made, and how you've used them, and what you learned from the experience, and also your impressions of the EdTech evolution.
Yes, thank you for having me. So on a personal note, I particularly liked Boston because my dad went to Harvard about, well, over 30 years ago, a very long time. I don't want to tell everyone how old I am. But I was 2 years old at the time. And he was able to travel the whole family. And so he had spent some time and so it was really great to go by again as an adult and experience what he experienced and be able to have that kind of connection and conversation with him around things that we've both been able to experience from different perspectives. But speaking more broadly about the entire program and everything that we're able to experience, for me, it was very exciting to view the US and what is loosely perceived as a Silicon Valley and compared to Kenya, which is considered a Silicon Savannah. There have been lots of comparisons around the two broad ecosystems, and to confirm for myself that we are very much not alike. So that was a very interesting experience for me as well. But with regard to the connections that I was able to make, while there are very many connections made with a lot of the organizations that we visited, I think the ones that I hold very dear are the connections from the other participants, the other alumni, some of them on this call, with whom we've grown to be very good friends. We share a lot of pictures of each other's families and each other's pets. And there's lots of very serious conversations that happen amongst us, and also very light moments, and sharing a lot of milestones. And for us, I feel the IVLP program definitely was that glue, that having experienced 3 weeks together was the glue that cemented the kinds of relationships that we had, to the extent that Voldemort would call me in Kenya and want me to participate, you know, in one of his programs, which I was very honored to do. The program was great. I think, Voldemort, you can confirm, I think the only African. And so that alone was already an experience of its own, to be able to experience different ecosystems again, and have conversations with startups from very far away. I have a lot of experience with Kenyan startups, not so much with European and Nordic startups. So that was great. What I loved the most about it was the fact that borders didn't mean anything. One, yes, because it was virtual, but also two, the kinds of conversations, the kinds of challenges that they were experiencing, what they were building for was very similar to the kind of edtech startups that we have here and what they built for. And so it was great to experience that and to feel relevant to the program, so that what I knew from my context was still relevant for those startups.
And did you participate in the Edtech Evolution program this summer?
Yeah, that is a program that I'm talking about. Yeah, with Voldemars. I was one of the mentors, one of the coaches on the program. And so I had the honor to walk at least 2 of the startups through the entire program, along with the other participants on this call.
Great. Thank you so much. So next, Vedran, I'd like to hear your thoughts about IVLP, the contacts you made, what you learned from it, and then about your impressions of this. It's so exciting that you came together for a follow-on program a year later, even under COVID-19 circumstances. So I'd like to hear about that as well.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to speak on behalf of my country and with all these friends that I met on IVLP. I had a few goals when I went to the program. The first goal is to get the network, but just network to connect with people in the United States and around, and the people from the group to help my country, my startups, and everybody around me to go and internationalize a bit. Especially now when Corona and pandemic, it's all around media and everything, and it influences all strategic decisions on all levels, and everything is changed and different. This need for internationalization and making connections worldwide is it's a basic principle of doing business these days. You have to go and you have to try to sell all around the world, and that was my actually goal to when I went to IVLP, and also to learn a lot about United States, about how people live there, what are the opportunities, and to learn more about my fields of interest in economy, in science, in everything. But what surprised me the most, it was the people that I met. These my new friends who I met on IVLP program that are great people, and I realized that all around the world we all think alike, and we all have similar goals, similar we take similar decisions, and our ecosystems are more or less similar. So similar that when Nekesa writes an article, and she's a really good writer, I asked her, and I took her article and rewrite it in my point of view in my country. So and I didn't have to change a lot, you know. And so we are all so similar, and I learned a lot from all these people. And that's the point of IVLP program, to connect the people and to teach them American culture. If you want to know something about Edtech Evolution, Edtech Evolution as it's something I think that was created in Waldemar's mind because of IVLP, because he met a lot of good friends, good people who are people who can do something in their countries, but they are also very competent to be mentors, to help others, and to help startups. So basically with IVLP, he got a group of people that can do whatever all around the world. And he created, and his friends and people that he worked with, he created a global program for education technologies, development of education technologies, and I was very surprised. It was something new. It was all online program. It was trainings. It was very intense. You had a morning check-in, evening check-out. In meantime, you had to do mentoring. You have to do talks with the teams. You have to help them to shift, to change, because it's almost like a 1 week long hackathon where you have to communicate all the time, and you have to be very fast in making decisions, and let's say almost solving the problems of startups. And when you see those startups, what they did, it's something great, really. In that short time, the startups who applied, you can see that we have a, let's say, bright future for education. And if the United States needs this kind of change in education, because I think education in the United States, it's something that have to evolve.
Great. Thank you so much. And Kadri.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back to Boston, looking at your picture, Catherine.
I did that on purpose.
I really enjoyed the harbor cruise we had in Boston, and also, like my fellow IVLP member said, that Boston was very impressive, and we learned a lot in Boston, and also had a lot of fun in Red Sox and during the harbor cruise. But IVLP for me was very important in the sense that as I'm working for Tartu Science Park, our main goal is to help science-based companies to grow, evolve, and help them to actually even help to create new science-based companies. So the theme was very right for me. I learned a lot. I understood the system, how US works with science inventions, how they help to commercialize them. And I think
it gave us the courage to do the thing that we started last year. It's called S2B Launchpad, and we help from science to business companies that grow out of Tartu University and other universities in Estonia. The IVLP program, like Vedran also said, the connections we made in US were very valuable. I have had follow-up conversations with people I met in Washington, also in Kansas. And I think also for me, having this group from more than 29 people be together for the whole 3 weeks, experience the things we are experienced, and also to find out that we are struggling with the same things. We are looking for similar answers, and to understand that there are some that have more evolved and we can very much learn from each other. And this has been an experience that I will never forget. And I think these kind of programs that we had in Edtech Evolution will involve also in the future. And Edtech Evolution for me was also a great experience to work as a coach for more than an hour or 2 hours, to work for a whole week with 2 startups. And this was something that I had never done before. And it was a great experience to see the group and the startups involved. For me, having the people there, like the amazing lineup of mentors and coaches and industry experts that Waldemars and his colleagues had gathered was something that both me and also my startups really cherished. And this helped the borders kind of disappear. We felt like we are in the same room, we are in the same zone, we need to do the same things, we had the same goals, and it was a really accelerating experience. So
great. Well, Ben, would you like to add a few words? I mean, you were on the US side of this program, but I know you were actively involved, including in the program in June. So love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I work at Learn Launch Accelerator. We're an EdTech investor and accelerator and early stage startup. And yeah, my only perspective from the trip a year ago was just talking about the EdTech ecosystem and presenting Learn Launch. So I think we love to host those kinds of things. So from that end, it was great. And then I was really excited when Waldemars reached out about the Edtech Evolution. I thought, I think, and we can probably talk about this in subsequent questions, but there's sort of there's a lack of support for early stage companies in the EdTech space in general, and especially accessible ones, so online and free. And I think just the fact that the group created this space where folks who come together and learn, I think it's just the amount. The more we can do things like that, the better we are. I think that, you know, we're ourselves included, where our programs are pretty exclusive, right? We invest in a few companies and they come to the program, and that's kind of all the accelerator does. We have a partner nonprofit, the Learn Launch Institute, that does things that are a little bit more accessible to folks all around. But it was awesome just to see a program that anyone could join. Obviously, there were people selected, but there wasn't a fee. There wasn't a sort of high barrier for entry. So I think the more we can do things like that, and then I think it creates movement within countries and organizations where people don't have an opportunity to mentor or to coach or to partner or something like that. So I think just the ability to start to create momentum around a thing called EdTech is really important. And again, there aren't that many of those organizations around who are doing the work. So the more we can create these kinds of things, especially online, so that folks from all over can come around, and we'll talk about that in a subsequent in a couple of subsequent points, I think is really important. So I think, you know, obviously outcomes were awesome, talked to some great companies, had a great time. All of those things are true, but I think just the impetus for actually starting something like this, very, very interesting, and something the industry needs.
Great, thank you. Well, I have a few more questions, and again, we'll go around the panelists and maybe take just a couple of minutes per person to answer the questions. The next one has to do with how your innovation ecosystems are adapting to the new virtual environment. What impact has, COVID and the requirement to work virtually had on places like co-working spaces, incubators? How do you deal with mental health issues? People are feeling isolated. And we've discussed challenges, but what are some of the benefits that you're seeing coming out of this move to virtual? So why don't we start with Cardi, in just a couple of minutes, your thoughts on that.
Thank you. I think Estonia has been very lucky in the sense of how COVID has affected our overall systems at this stage. But at the beginning, we had to really rethink our programs. We moved a lot of them online. We closed our, just like 1 week earlier, opened co-working space, in the sense that we went to home office mode with our colleagues, but our startups had all the conditions and health measures to continue on working if they decided so. So some of our startups still went to work at our co-working space. They had the disinfection things there ready, and also the cleaning was upped. But our main premises, where we have also medical companies, where we have 12,000 square meters of room, where we have to help the companies to produce still the necessary things they need to make medication and also medical equipment, which was relevant in the COVID-19 fight against COVID-19. So there we had to do a lot of rethinking how we can help them still work. So again, with the measures of cleaning their hands, more cleaning personnel at the premises, and so on. So it demanded a lot, but I think we managed in less than 1 week to have it all up and running. But we have learned that these online versions actually work more when we're speaking about workshops and seminars. People like it. They can rewatch it if they don't have time. They spend less time on travel. So we will definitely continue them in the future. And overall, I think the situation was rather beneficial, that we moved even more things online, and we are more agile to do that. Estonia, in the sense, has it good. We are very used to doing things online. So this is nothing new for us.
Great, thanks. And Vedran, what about your experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina with going virtual, and pluses and minuses?
Yeah, everything started funny here. First, everybody was thinking nothing is going to happen, that Corona will not reach our Mediterranean climate in Herzegovina. Everybody's saying summer is coming and nothing's gonna happen there. And after it reached, it was total lockdown for 1 month. So we have a co-working space in the middle of the city, and also we are a startup incubator hub with more than 50 companies inside of our building. So basically everything stopped and everybody moved at home. Since more or less majority of companies are IT related, they were not influenced directly by this situation, because they were started working from home very fast. It was very fast transition also to us, and we were trying to provide them with the tools, the best tools to survive in this new online virtual environment. So our goal was there to help. Also, we were trying to do some things for our surroundings, but maybe let's talk about it some other time. We were basically trying to help. What happened to our ecosystem? At first, we were thinking everybody started working from home, and now all our offices that are in rent, nobody will return ever, because they will figure out it's easy to work from home, because really it was easy for us because we immediately had the tools to work from home. After a decline of situation of Corona and after gradually people started returning back to work, we figure out that work at home is best like for 2 or 3 first weeks. But then productivity is starting to go down. And everybody is losing their focus. They have to change their life habits. And then there you have that influence on mental health. You know, killing productivity killer is the constant disruption in your time and focus. So if you have kids playing and you are trying to work, you cannot do that. You know, constant disruptions of your focus, it's very, very bad. I'm just same example as kids because I'm a father, I have 2 kids. So that's what was happening. I had a high productivity at the beginning, but then kids and my wife and everybody realized for a while that I'm at home, and my boy started to knocking on doors, etc. And that was happening to almost everyone. And then productivity started to fall, and people were thinking, I cannot stand it at home anymore. I have to go, I have to work, I have to go outside, and that was the same thing that was happening to all 50 companies. Everybody, when they returned on the offices, everybody, I talked with almost everybody, and when they returned, they said we were just waiting to come back. And what good came from this adaptation to this new online system is that everybody figure out how they can save the time in meetings, how they can better organize themselves and save a lot of travel money, because most of travel for a lot of companies was useless, just to go and to have 10-minute meeting and drive 100 kilometers in one direction. So there is no that anymore. So basically a lot of companies saved, and a lot of companies are in huge problems as well. For instance, Mostar is where I live, city of Mostar, it's a touristic city. More than 1 million people, tourists come every year to this city. This year, I don't think that any tourists came.
Yes, so we're going to have the same issues here in Boston. Yeah, no, it's terrible for tourism. Absolutely. Let me just move on to some of the others to get their thoughts. And Nikesa, can you tell me what the experience has been with going virtual in Kenya, how it's impacted incubators, the innovation space, and also some of the psychological issues? And just a few minutes, if you could.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So naturally, like anywhere else in the world, I guess co-working spaces closed or reduced, you know, the number of people that they could have working at any one time. The pandemic was a shock, or rather the impact of it was a shock for a lot of people and really disrupted business models. So in my ecosystem, a lot of the co-working spaces don't make money from programs, rather they make them from stuff like events, you know, and renting out, so membership and so on. So that stopped, and no one was expecting it. So the shock to the system was that we woke up one day and your revenue, your primary source of revenue just didn't exist anymore. For those that were able to adapt quickly, they quickly moved a lot of their programs online, and it was business as usual. For those that were drastically affected, they closed, and there is currently no sign of them opening up. For those that are looking at potentially opening up again, there is a lot of conversations internally about the best way to do that. And so people have, I mean, there's a broad spectrum of how that has affected people. But what has happened is there is a lot more conversations around mental health. And so for a lot of people, it's presented an opportunity, or it has presented a need to talk about what's the current problem is, which is that there is no money, people have lost jobs, have managers are dealing with personal effects, and now also have to deal with, but how do I continue to take care of my community? And so we're having a lot more conversations around mental health than we've had in a long time. I was surprised to discover that my government actually has a task force report on mental health that they published last year. It's something that I would never have thought to look for, but now as we continue to have that conversation, I'm actually finding documentation that this is actually a conversation that we're having and having really seriously in Kenya. So that has been good. And now as people begin to deal with the mental health issues and learning how to work on that and work through that, then we begin to see the work is now returning. So people are beginning to work, the programs are beginning to run. We're beginning to have a lot more virtual events and webinars to support our communities. So there was a bit of a dip as people dealt with their personal issues, but as they learned to cope with it, it's now almost back to work as usual.
Great, thank you. And Voldemars, how about in Latvia? How is the new virtual world, what impact does it have on your ecosystem, and also addressing the things that, the positives and the negatives that have come out, including in the mental health area?
Yes, I can mostly agree to what the previous speaker said, and that was sort of a shock and a panic at the beginning, maybe. Mostly because of unknown threat and uncertainty and need to change your habits. Fortunately, in Latvia, the disease didn't hit so hard, and soon we were more or less back to normal, except international travel. But otherwise, I think so far people reflect back to that time as either nightmare or adventure or extra vacation. But we'll see if that continues, and in the long term it definitely will affect mental health. Mine, for example, because I was also working from home. I have kids and family, and that is a huge challenge, of course. And you can run in that mode for months or a few months, but not forever.
Right.
Speaking about innovation ecosystem and startups, well, I mostly work with early stage startups, and biggest challenge they had, of course, was because of slowing down of connections with industry and with investors, because people had the switch of priorities in that time and still have. Otherwise, early stage startups has not much to lose. They can only gain, and gain from opportunities, from what new normal can offer. And we saw many startups using this time as an opportunity. There were a lot of pivots towards medicine, towards personal care, hygiene towards different healthcare applications, digital applications, and in Latvia the ecosystem was very vibrant and very active, and not only let's say the existing startups made pivots, but also many people got involved in founding new startups, working on new applications of existing technologies. That was something crazy, and still it goes on. It's like a COVID bubble of innovations we're having.
Snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Yeah, no, that's cool. So, Cardi, we'll finish with you. How has it impacted, just in a few minutes, how has it impacted your Estonian ecosystem, for better or for worse?
I think we have pretty much the same as Waldemar's explained. So a lot of startups, early stage or seed stage startups, they who were not ready to go to market yet, they packed up and saw that early on that they are not suitable or not able to bring the product to market. But I think a lot of new things started, especially like Waldemar and Vedran also said, and I guess also has a child. So a lot of change erupted around Edtech. As said earlier, the education system has not changed in centuries. So a lot of new startups in Estonia came from Edtech, or the Edtech startups in very early stage started to evolve really rapidly. So I think especially for Edtech startups, it has been a very great opportunity. And I'm happy to see that also the curriculum in schools or the nations have seen that they have to change the curriculum of the education of different schools to suit the new normal, or the online version. And when we talked about also the mental health issues earlier, I think having to spend a lot of time in front of a screen is both tiring for all of us, but also for the children. So it has to find kind of a balance between online and offline things, because right now everything that they gave the kids was, I think, like 80% was online. You have to make videos, you have to have these talks. So it has to somehow find the balance. And I think we will need that also in the future, if not with COVID, then with something else.
Thank you. So Cardi, just Ben, briefly, your standpoint from here in Boston, and then we'll move on to our final question and open it up for Q&A.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll talk specifically about how it's affected us as a innovation group in the U.S. And obviously the U.S. has had a tougher time with COVID than other countries. So I think really quickly, we've adapted by pulling our accelerator program online fully, obviously. So we were running into an accelerator program when COVID hit, and we had to change the entire program to be online. And essentially we changed it to be relatively the same, similar content, similar mentors, similar things we would have done in person, just online. I think it was the right move, but I think as we move toward a more blended model anyway, we're gonna have to change it, because I think the sort of sentiment in the US has been when we get back to normal, or the slightly new normal, but relatively the same. And I think my perspective is that we're gonna change quite a bit, and we need to change quite a bit. So I think it's forced us to do those things. One of the major things for us is our Learn Launch runs a co-working space for EdTech startups, and we're closing it down. And I think that's sort of one of the things where we're not a WeWork, we're not a CIC, we're not one of these big groups that has lots of investment around whatever industry or whatever sort of startups they have. And so we have to make a decision on whether or not we think EdTech companies come back to work. And honestly, it doesn't seem like that's the case. And so we're changing our model pretty aggressively. And so figuring out what other business models we can spin up now to make up for the fact that we don't run a co-working space. And the co-working space came out of the fact that there was an ecosystem starting to turn 8 years ago. And we were like, we need a place to convene. And people just aren't convening anymore. And it didn't take long for us to realize, like, oof, this could be a long haul for us. So we shouldn't have this physical space that's burdening us. So we did pull that. And then I think for mental health is, you know, we were in the middle of a cohort with 5 companies. And we had one day where the companies were just like, guys, we got to slow down on the content. And I think that was sort of a moment where we realized that the hierarchy of needs has shifted a little bit away from, you know, business all the time. Let's talk about the cap table, let's talk about these things, let's talk about sales and ROI and, you know, whatever all the business stuff is. And people were like, I just need to be a person. I need you to take a second. And I need to reassess how I can manage my team, manage my people, because at the end of the day, for our founders, they're managing teams. And so, you know, they've put themselves in the back seat in a lot of ways. And so how do we as an accelerator, as an innovation group, support the founders in the way they need to be supported the most? And right now, they don't need to, seemingly, they don't need to be supported as much in the business as they do in the how to be a person. And so how do we then change our programs to know that that's kind of going to persist, we think, right? We're not going back to normal. This is going to take a lot longer than we thought, especially in the US. So we may have to change what we're accelerating and how, but that's.
Got it. Thank you. Well, again, I know our audience is anxious to ask their questions. So 1 minute per person, please. The final question, it's more of a big picture question, is what is your role as innovators in this time? Where do you go from here? What does the future look like for you as innovators? And maybe if you could each just in a sentence or two tell me, and we'll begin with you, Woldemars.
Thank you for the question. That's a good one, and really hard to answer. Well, if you are an innovator, and I believe you don't know what is the end result of your process, and so the same in my case. It's hard to tell what future will bring and where we will go from here, but innovation is something that you need to move forward, to be competitive, to get a little bit ahead of time, and I believe that digital experience of future will bring us more integrated internationally, and innovations will be applied more international rather than local. And also innovation ecosystems, while they are currently very local because sponsored by local governments, local universities, they need to go more international and be more connected and co-created. And that's the way I see.
Great, thank you. So Cardi, what is your role as an innovator going forward?
I think I totally agree with Woldemars. I think we will be more global, and we as innovators have to adapt and act as an example and be the connectors, in the sense that we have to be there to create new connections, create new networks and new communities. Like Edtech Evolution was a good example. It was a very multinational and global event, and solely focused on one theme. I think this can be multiplied in other sectors also, and I hope it will be the new thing that we help companies with. Great,
thank you. Nikessa, what does your future as an innovator look like?
So it's going to be what it's always been, which is to identify and find solutions for some of the world's most pressing challenges. I think that's really the role of innovators, and there will always be a challenge even in the unforeseeable future, and it will be the role of innovators to meet those challenges, and the world will be looking at them for solutions. Some of the world's best innovations were born out of crisis, so there will always be an opportunity for innovators to be relevant and to shine.
Great, thank you. Vedran, In a minute, what is your future as an innovator?
It will be very short. Actually, I don't see myself as a innovator, but more person who will recognize the right kind of opportunities and, let's say, connect the dots in the future. So I think these kind of persons as innovators can be very important to help in future of our work. There I can mention that just today we had a Connecto conference in my country that Intera Technology Park organized, and we had more than 360 companies connected through B2B meetings, and that's something that that we innovated through the thinking on how to help companies and how to connect them.
Thank you very much. So Ben, do you want to wrap it up?
Sure. Well, I agree with everything that was said, specifically Nikessa. I think that was exactly the right thing to say. I think for us, it's the way I would say it is I'm tired of hearing when we go back to normal or the new normal. And I think that as innovators, we have to push that thinking a little bit more and not hunker down and not wait for the future, but create it. It's our job to be the ones who are looking out for this is how we're going to push whatever the major challenges are forward. And again, as Nikessa said, innovation is born out of crisis in a lot of ways, or has been in the past. And I think this continues to be a test for, can the innovation community hold its promise to everybody, I guess. I don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, truly, never, not letting a good crisis go to waste, so to speak. Well, thank you, panelists. This was a really interesting discussion, and we do have some questions for the audience. So I'd like to begin, and I think what I'll do is, if someone would like to volunteer to answer, please speak up, otherwise I will call on you. So the first question is, what is something we should all look out for in the future of EdTech? Who would like to answer that? Okay, Voldemars.
I could try because I was thinking about that a lot. So thank you for the question. That's an important one. I will maybe not have a professional answer to that, but I believe that education is underestimated among business, and that's something that people treat like something natural that comes together with a person, like his hair, hands, legs, his body also comes together with education. But it's not so, and education is even more worse, because I believe that will be one of the last things that robots will take away from humans when we will be remaining just as eating material. We will still be seeking for education. So that is an important thing to work with, and I would like to reflect to Ms. Cathy Mannick from Finland. She was on Edtech Evolution program as a speaker, and what she said is really simple but very true. So in the future, all startups and people working with education should keep in mind that they should focus on the value that is brought to students, only to students, not to parents, not to schools, and even not to teachers, but only to students. And I think this crisis also help us to understand that.
Thank you. And anybody else want to add to that? Ben?
I'll pop in. So I think if you were to talk about broad ed tech across early childhood, K-12, higher and workforce, I think we're talking about right now, the emphasis is on accessibility. In every conversation we're having with every startup, with every partner, with every investor, for a long time, we sort of talked the talk about, it has to be accessible, people have to be able to use it. And now it's kind of like, we're in a world where we can now see the disparities. They're stark, and we knew it, but now we see it. And I think technology can't ignore sort of the burden it's putting on the education system, right? It has a great opportunity, but it also can create a barrier So I think the importance of creating accessible technologies for everyone, no matter the circumstance, no matter where they're from, no matter how they're what the world they're living in. And I think specifically for funders, that becomes the most important thing. And finally, right, requiring EdTech products and technology to actually be accessible and not sort of just say that they are and, you know, happen in the background, maybe if they're lucky. So I think we're just going to need to hold people more accountable. And we're hearing that from investors too, that is becoming the most important thing in any technology they're investing in right now. Not that investors are everything, but they do sort of tend to be the eye of the storm in terms of an ecosystem. So.
Great. Well, that ties into the next question that's come in, is how can EdTech innovations help advance and accelerate learning and development amongst disadvantaged communities? And Ben, you've touched on that. Does anybody else have something they'd like to add on that subject? Including
Yeah.
Nikessa,
So you're right, Ben did touch on it. It's really around accessibility. So in my context, for example, EdTech for sure, what it does is that it equalizes the playing field. If you make the assumption, which is true for a lot of EdTech products, that they are constantly refreshed with up-to-date content or information that students can learn. That means, in principle, regardless where you are, whichever small city, you're getting the exact same content as someone in one of the major cities. But the issue, again, at least in my context, is that of accessibility. So one is just, do the kids have the basic devices to access that content in the first place? And even if they did, do the areas in which they live have access to the internet, which is an issue that we still face to date. And so for us, that issue is really critical. We actually, as a country, it was announced a couple of weeks back that our students are just going to repeat the year because EdTech just isn't working. It isn't working for everyone equally. And so it's not really fair to have students go through a curriculum that they can't have access to and then have to take tests what they weren't able to study in the first place. So EdTech in principle does equalize the playing field, but then we need to talk about the accessibility.
Thank you. Well, we have a live question. Mary Eitema has her hand up. So Mary, please give us your question. And Josh, can you unmute Mary, please?
Hi there. Thanks, folks. I actually had two, so I'm gonna pick one of them. I guess, yeah. I mean, as you're entrepreneurs and you're innovators, those things. Those traits exist in many fields. Why are you being entrepreneurs and innovating in EdTech?
Who would like to start? Okay, Vedran.
I can just say that we didn't choose to work just in EdTech. Voldemars is, for instance, and Nikessa and everybody else are very active in plenty of other areas. But our way of work, our position is there that you have to start your day with, I don't know, EdTech, STEM education, seminars, webinars, conference, mentoring, consulting with companies, helping them to I don't know, to register something or to connect with international companies. So internationalization, it's many different fields that we are encountering every day. There's science, academia, all kinds of fields that we are encountering every day. And EdTech is something that we gathered on because of Voldemar's initiative that help us to realize that there is a niche of EdTech that you have to improve. That's just my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, any of you.
Great. Well, it'd be great if we could hear from each of you on this. So it looks like Voldemars, were you the next one?
Yeah,
And maybe we can just go around and then wrap up on this question. Everybody give their thoughts on this.
I can shortly, briefly tell my story. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been founder or co-founder of a number of companies now about for 17 years already, and I still have companies in 4 countries. But for a while ago, I became also a business angel. Started to work with startups and also become a co-founder and managing partner of Commercialization Reactor Fund, where we work with deep tech startups, science-based startups. The reason why I came up with the idea of Edtech Evolution and work with education is simple and complicated. First, because in my experience as a business angel and co-founder, I'm already connected with the education sector. But the real reason is because education is proven to be something important, something globally important. And I personally, I know how to work with early stage companies. I know how to work with startups, and I know how to build and run an acceleration program. And this is my contribution to that globally important industry and topic, what I can bring to the table for education.
Great, thanks. Who'd like to volunteer next?
I can go.
Okay.
Yeah, so I work exclusively in education. Learn Launch is all EdTech. I think for me and for Learn Launch too, it always feels like people lead with education, right? You start in education, you go back to education, especially in times of crisis. You know, I think for us, it's always a story of how do you reinvent yourself? How do you upskill yourself throughout your entire life? And it feels like the foundational thing that everybody at every age sort of needs to live a fulfilled and fulfilling life. And I think the more that we can support learners in every sort of range, and of course K-12 is a lot more sort of restrictive and has a lot more rules. And then I think, you know, as we get later, it's, you know, what is lifelong learning, right? And how do we support it? And I personally just find it really fascinating that you can reinvent yourself. You can go back to the sort of the drawing board as many times as you want. And, you know, how can we support that? How can I support that sort of those spaces for students and students of all ages? So I just find it fascinating, the lifespan of education.
Great, thank you. Okay, next, Kadri.
Thank you. I think, like Ben said, education is something that is basis of everything that we do in the future. And for me, being involved in science-based companies, helping science-based companies grow, I see the importance of very good education. And during this time of crisis, we have seen also that the things that we have done before are not working as well as we thought. Estonia is #1 in PISA test, which is for K-12, the measuring board. We are #1 in Europe. We are very proud of that, but still, I feel that we have a long way to go in the sense that to provide to every kid the same level of education. And also that a new kind of curriculum needs to be introduced through this new learning methods for the future. And I think for me, why I wanted to be involved in this EdTech Evolution, for example, was that I see that a lot of like our startups, which are in the field of gamification or gaming also, are focusing on EdTech in the sense that the new kids, the young people that are growing right now are very used to doing things in a fun way, and you can gamify a lot of things. For example, use VR to learn science, do science experiences, or teach the kids how to write, or teach the kids how to what are the letters or whatever. You can actually gamify it, and it goes easier doing through a computer than just writing in Word or doing an Excel, for example.
Great. And finally, Nikesa.
Yep. Just like several of the other people on this call, I am sector agnostic in the work that I do. And so I will support innovators regardless what it is that they are solving for. But again, because of this ecosystem and what the pressing issues are, there will be a lot of innovators in the agriculture space and in the edtech space. And so for me, that's why the interest. A lot of the innovators are basically solving for the challenges that our mainstream education system has failed or is still working to meet. And so the infrastructure challenges, a lot of our startups are trying to solve for one, the educational content and also the accessibility. And so there are interesting innovations around solar enabled devices. And so if you don't have electricity, you can still charge them using the energy of the sun. There are innovations around how do you easily translate that content so that regardless whether you can speak English, you can still, have access to that, to that content. So that's why the interest in EdTech.
Great. So I think I've got everybody. I heard from everyone. And so with that, I would like to thank all of the panelists again. This was a fantastic discussion, and I certainly learned a lot, and I'm so impressed with what you're doing and the fact that you all came together to do this across boundaries. So with that, I will turn it over to WorldBoston, and Sarah will wrap up the program. Thank you all again, and thanks to our audience.
Thank you, Cathy. And thank you to all of our panelists. We have run out of time, as Cathy said, as we want to respect everyone's time, even the additional time for questions. So thank you. We appreciate your own call to citizen diplomacy during this challenging time, and I hope you will continue to tune into our virtual webinar series. WorldBoston has been running our virtual series, International Exchange in a Time of Isolation, since mid-April. We will have one more opportunity coming up next week before we put the series on a pause due to now picking up IVLP programming again, this time virtually. Our final event in the series for a while will be with a comedian activist from Israel who was on an exchange here in Boston when COVID-19 forced her to return home, where she found herself put into a hotel for quarantine. She will share with us how that experience became a cross-cultural one in her own country. This is a joint event with the Consulate of Israel in Boston and will be at 1 p.m. on August 5th. More information and registration is available on our website. Please stay tuned for updates on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and sign up for our newsletters to stay informed of opportunities. If you haven't already, you can do so on our website. Caitlin, I believe you'd like to share a little bit more about future events at CRDF Global as well. So over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. While we continue to curate our next webinar on innovation ecosystems, we have an exciting announcement to make in the meantime. CRDF Global is pleased to announce that applications are open for the Rodney Nichols Science and Technology Innovation Fellowship. So if you or someone you know is a PhD student or early career scientist in the US that would be interested in global collaboration on agriculture sciences and agri-tech, please visit our website and take a look at this incredible opportunity to engage in science diplomacy and to continue to innovate. And if you haven't already, follow us on social media at CRDF Global to get the latest news on our upcoming virtual events and fellowship opportunities. Finally, thank you all for joining us today, and an enormous thank you to Cathy Mannick and our speakers from around the world. Take care, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next time.